Now let's get into it on the other side.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, on the other side, Leadership After Transition. I'm your host, Jeffrey Lodick. For all of you who have never been here before, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for tuning in. For you loyal folks that keep coming back, man, you are so appreciative. I'm greatly appreciative of you, and I know you're going to have a great time tonight. Hey, before we get started this evening, I just want to throw out a couple little administrative things. Look, if you want to follow this show, you want to see it live, here we are. Every Thursday night of the month of February, we'll be here on Thursday evening. We got a great lineup coming up. I posted it up on LinkedIn, but we got the former SEAC, John Wayne Troxel. We got Mike Abrams, the founder of 4 Block, which I'm really, really looking forward to that. And then we have a young man that I'm not even going to announce his name because I'll tell you this, he's a friend of mine, but I'm going to do a lot of marketing for him only because, man, this dude is killing it here in the Tampa area. And he's just a great personal friend of mine. I'm excited for him to be here. Hey, so before we get started with Herb, hey, look, you can find me on YouTube. You can find me on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, whatever place. So if you want to watch it live, watch it live. If you don't want to watch my face because, well, and it's a face only a mother could love, you can listen to the audio version. It's great. So just join, subscribe, and do all that review stuff, right? Because it's good for me. I get to know how to change the show. If you hate it, well, tell me. I'll fix it. I promise. Hey, without further ado, I'm going to bring on what I consider a good friend of mine. If you find yourself in LinkedIn world and you start talking about transition, you end up being, magnetized towards transition talk and people that do it. Well, look, who better, right? Herb Thompson is a guy that is known for his transition conversations. He talks about it regularly. He posts about his experiences, and he's awesome. So in the comments below, there is a link. If you want to hear the episode 1 where we actually talked about the in-depth look at Herb and his career and his transition, go and listen to it. And we're going to kind of do a continuation right now of that conversation. And without further ado, hey, welcome. Herb Thompson. I do the clap, man. You get the clap, bro. I love that. I'm telling you, man, I'm like a little kid with little toys, bro. It's cool. How you doing, man?
Awesome. How you doing, Jeff, man? I'm happy here. And I have not ever had a better standing ovation than that right there.
Well, look, I got to tell you, I do it all the time because I never get a standing ovation. That actually makes me feel good about myself. And anyway, it's good. Hey, welcome, Ellis. Hey, so if you're watching, hey, throw a comment on there, ask a question. I'll even do this and throw your name and face up on our screen so Herb can say what's up to you. I can say what's up, and we can answer some questions. Thanks for coming by, Ellis. I really do appreciate you. So, hey, man, since our last conversation, things have changed a little bit. I mean, I know that while we were talking, you were a candidate. You were a master's degree guy. You were going for your master's degree. You hadn't finished it, I don't believe, at that time. You were just finishing it up. So kind of let's pick up from there and just let's talk about that. Let's talk about employment opportunities. And then we're going to do a little shift. What I've never done on this show before, Herb, is I've never really gone into someone's LinkedIn page, which, by the way, this isn't a LinkedIn class, but I want to tell you, we look for activity, right? And that's what I look for, is to see if I'm going to send a message to someone, see if they're active on LinkedIn. But there's a lot of filters. So not only can I see what you're active in, I can actually look at your posts, right? I can filter it down to see what you're posting about. And that's what I did. I wanted to bring up some of the most engaged conversations that you brought up. And then, we'll talk a little bit about networking, because we're going to try a little bit of we're going to play a game and see how much networking can be done just through comments on your LinkedIn page. But anyhow, so let's talk. We graduated with our master's degree. When did you graduate?
Back in May. Man, that was in 2021. Anybody remember that? So May, graduated there. Cornell felt sorry enough for me to throw a degree, and no, it was a great experience. It was exactly what I thought it was, and really was a big step to help in the transition, right? Just to be more marketable and for personal reasons, personal goals. Awesome experience.
No doubt. Hey, so one thing I failed to mention, because I want to, whether you want to or not, I got it right here. It's handy dandy. I get it. I keep it right here just so whenever I'm on TV, I can promote it, right? Because here's the book, The Transition Mission, a Green Beret's approach to transition from military service. Hey, look, I remember when it came out, you and I had never met. I bought it online. I contacted you the day I purchased it. It didn't get to my house yet, but I contacted you and said, hey, I really want to have a conversation with you. So on page 35, no, I'm kidding. That's a joke. Anyhow, hey, that's an inside joke for those that aren't listening. Anyway, it's funny. But that being said, that book was awesome. The conversation about how the book came about, the quickness in which you wrote it, and the ease in which it's read. It's a must read for any transition and service member, in my opinion. It's straightforward to the truth, to the facts, and then move from there. And it's kind of like who you are, right? I mean, you're a straightforward guy. We just go about it. And we graduated from Cornell. Just so you know, I sent a letter to go to there one time, and I don't want to tell you the response because it was not kind. No, I never replied. My grades would never have let me get to, like, I don't know. I go to community colleges, but anyway. So at the time though, you're working a little bit. You're going to school to get your degree to make yourself more marketable. Which I don't know why in the world you would do that. Herb, to make yourself more marketable, to meet the basic requirements of entry into a lot of places, and to put yourself in a different echelon, if you would. But you make yourself more marketable, and then after you graduate, what changes for you?
Yeah, for me, and it wasn't just a graduation day, but it was like, okay, what was I doing this for, right? And multiple reasons: marketability, challenge, etc. And then it was like, okay, am I going to stay doing what I'm doing, or do I want to go do something else? And interestingly enough, I ended up leaving my job, doing management consulting, and it wasn't the easiest decision because my girlfriend was not working at the time, so I'm the sole breadwinner of the house back in that time. And yeah, I was getting retirement, a little VA disability, but as you know, that we ain't getting rich off that. We can put a little food on the table, but it's not doing it. And it was like, but I just feel in my gut like I need to go do, and I didn't know what. I just knew I wanted to make an impact at an organization, making an impact. And I said, I'm gonna go find it, and if I don't put myself out there, I'm not gonna find it. So I went and looked for it, and there was different roles that really intrigued me. And then I found one, after being out of work for about 4 months, I found one that I was like, this. I read the job description on LinkedIn and said, this was written for me. Like, literally, did they go, hey, how do we get Herb Thompson to come work here? Like, this must have been the one. And it was a perfect fit. And I want to change it for the world.
No doubt. And so let me ask you about the use of LinkedIn, right? So obviously people are, I think majority of senior leaders specifically, but there's a lot of people on LinkedIn from the military. I mean, it's grown. The presence of the veteran community has grown exponentially on LinkedIn over the past 12 months. I mean, we talk about a 5-year span, but over the past 12 months alone, it's exploding, right? So when you're posting stuff and you're putting things out there and you're speaking about your experiences, how much traction does that get from external folks, not veterans, whether it be businesses or companies that are looking for opportunities or employees, and you happen to fit the bill and you pique their interest with your with not only your qualifications but just because you're very transparent, you speak very clearly of who you are on LinkedIn. Does that benefit you in any kind of way?
Yeah, I definitely believe it would benefit. And I mean, I've also had people have no clue who the heck I am. And they're like, oh, I don't even use LinkedIn, whatever. But I mean, a lot of times it's resonating. They're like, hey, I already know you. Like, I've seen your stuff on LinkedIn, and we're not connected, but I still see your stuff. We're a second connection, or I follow you. So yeah, I mean, tremendous helps. And I mean, I think a lot of that goes, they don't really got to figure out who I mean, maybe is this just some fake guy that lives in LinkedIn and he comes out of the app and goes to the grocery store? I don't know. But like, it's, hey, no, this guy's real. Maybe they have to verify that, but they already get a sense of who I am. And I don't think LinkedIn has to be used that way, but it does, provide some goodness in that regards of, hey, yeah, we kind of know this guy already, talking with him. And I've had that happen, or even once I've interviewed him and maybe they didn't know me, they went back and looked at it and they saw some things and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is who this guy is. So I definitely think it's helped. And I've used different techniques to leverage LinkedIn for different jobs and to get into grad school. All three were different approaches.
No doubt. And I think that's the beauty of LinkedIn, right? I think what's interesting about the use of LinkedIn, what I don't think people actually consider, is that when you write your resume, it's beautiful. It's got your action, your impact, result, or your star method, whatever method we use, right, to show some quantifiable stuff, right? And it's good. But the typical things it doesn't show is what everybody concerns themselves with is the soft skills, right? It's the ability to articulate this or converse about that. But I think that through LinkedIn, if used properly, you show that regularly through how you articulate the message in which you're sending, and you often send very powerful messages with very few lines. I mean, there's people that write books on LinkedIn, which are great. I mean, because I want to, I mean, I read most stuff on LinkedIn. I watch a video or two, but I like to read. I want to feel it. But your messages are usually short, concise, to the point, and it's kind of, I would say, profound in a lot of ways, because you take basic things that happen to you on a day-to-day basis, and you make it relatable to the guy that's in Florida right now that doesn't have to wear a sweatshirt because it was 84 degrees, although it was 32 the other day and my tomato plants died. Anyway, that's neither here nor there, man. But I think it's great. Hey, before I actually bring in some LinkedIn conversations that you've gone through over the last couple of weeks, months, I do want to make a comment about your beard, because we've had this conversation in the past. Obviously, last time you and I talked, if anybody watches the video, they'll see that my beard it wasn't out here like yours, but it was long like yours, and it was beautiful. And then I cut it, and it's horrible. But I want to ask you about that, right? Because so often in almost every transition program or every transition dress to impress, whatever conversation comes up about playing the part, um, facial hair comes up, haircuts come up, the proper attire comes up. And it's interesting to see a lot of LinkedIn photos and a lot of post-military meetings or whatever, on the transition meetings, even if they're no longer in the military, they have the haircut looks like mine. I mean, I just can't grow hair, man, but they're shaved still, and they present themselves in a clean cut manner because maybe that's who they are, or maybe that's what they're told. What have you found with you, as from a grooming perspective, of way people approach you or the way people talk to you? Does it make it difficult, or have we gotten past that?
No, yeah, I think actually a lot of times I won't even know, right? It probably shuts down conversations. People are like, "Oh, I'm not gonna reach out and talk to that guy," or "No, we don't want to hire him." What? Okay, then we're not a fit. If you're that worried about hair and what color socks I'm wearing, hey, all right, maybe we don't need to talk, right? And that's just where I'm at. But also, like for me, people recognize it. It's almost, I believe the beard's probably more well known to me, right? So like, oh, you're the guy with the beard. Yeah, I know you. So I mean, it happens. People be like, oh, I know you, and it's still weird to me when somebody's like, oh, I know you, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
But it's me, right? And I'm not changing. But I have to understand that there's some benefits in it and there's some cons. I have tattoos, right?
Yeah.
I have tattoos. There's benefits to that. I remember a time at Cornell where I was scared, like my first day, like, oh my God, man, I got tattoos. I'm here at this prestigious university.
Mm.
The professor on day 2, excuse me, walks out and she's got tattoos. I was like, shoop, sleeves up. But it was just because, like, oh, okay, I felt comfortable, right? Because I see it, but I think we can take that different hairstyles depend on your ethnicity and race.
Mhm.
Different things like facial or not facial hair, or you color your, or just certain styles. I think, but you got to understand, hey, sometimes it's going to turn people off. Sometimes it'll be what you become known for, and that's okay. It's just, you just got to be accept it, right? And be like, oh, it's worth it to me. This is what I'm going forward with.
Yep, and I think that's great. I love the philosophy in that. I love the way you consider it, right? I mean, because here's the deal: a lot of people don't realize the identity shift within yourself as you're transitioning. And again, and I don't know how many times I've had the conversation, but it's so often that we have these transition conversations, and the only real consideration for transition is employment, right? That's we're always looking for the job and the job and the job and everything. That is the number one consideration. And I get it. I truly do, obviously, because you need to know where the next meal is coming from, the lifestyle change that may or may not take place, the family that you're responsible for. There's a million things to think of. So the job or the employment is obviously up there. But the transition is so much more than a job. And that's why I think there's a correlation between the military and athletes. And I've spoke to a bunch of professional athletes over the course of the last 2 years in regards to this, because we consider, we're going to have the SEAC on next week, right? And a lot of people don't relate to that because they look at it and they say, well, he was well connected. He served X amount of time. He does. Yeah, I got it. And maybe he has an easier time. Maybe he has an easier time getting employment. It's possible, right? But there's still so much more about transition that has nothing to do with my next job, and it's really a whole lifestyle change to even consider my mentality, with the way the mindset shift, what things have to change, and do I want to be perceived as a military guy, or do I want to be Herb Thompson that wears the beard? And I got to tell you, I'm going to share a story with you, Herb, because I actually had the same encounter at the airport when I did have my beard. There was 3 guys. I don't like people talking about me. It's one of these things. I'm like, I pride myself on respect. I'm just kidding. This is when I was 12. Anyway, but my wife and I were at the airport before I had shaved, and 3 guys were over there, and one's pointing, and I can see them. Like I'm looking at them, look at me, and pointing. My wife's like, stop staring at them. I'm saying, hey, they're talking about. I know they're talking about. I don't know what they're talking about. Well, one of the guys comes over and he's like, hey, man, are you the guy that talks about military transition? I'm like, I am. He goes, I told you. Like, he turns to his buddies because of the beard. He couldn't tell my face. He doesn't know my name, but he sure recognized the beard. So I can relate significantly to the beard story, and it's hilarious, man.
Yeah.
But,
Hey, for next week, I love John. So he's going to be tremendous. But I also probably where I look differently of one thing that we probably haven't talked about much is you talk about it so much more in a job, right? Like every transition program's okay. Yes, you need that. You need your basic substance, your food, your water. Okay, that's great. I've looked at like the triad. You need to know your identity. What is your identity? What is your purpose and or mission? Call it either or. And what is your team? We never had to question that in the military. We knew it was on our uniform. We walked in with our formation, so to speak. You knew all 3 of those things. When you leave that behind, I don't care what job you get. It doesn't come with a purpose and mission necessarily. It does not necessarily come with a identity, and it doesn't necessarily come with, hey, here's my new team. So you gotta find those 3 things, and that's where I've looked at. Like that's the 3 I think solve a lot of problems we're having in the country if especially our veterans found those 3 things once they're out, plus the job to obviously feed their families and stuff.
no doubt. I love that. I'm going to actually put that in the comments I'll mute it when you're talking and I'll type it. So don't think I'm like not paying attention. I'm going to put that because I think that's significant. It's actually a good perspective. I never thought about it in that manner. Obviously, when you go to do many transition programs, they talk about employment, the job you like, and the money you make, right? Or the location, right? Those are the things that kind of are like the bullseye or the target. And that's really, like you said, that's an employment goal. But really to know who you are, there are several personality tests, right? I mean, whether it be the DISC or the Briggs, whatever Myers-Briggs, and it's interesting because I've talked to a lot of senior folks, and majority of senior folks have taken those at some point in their military career or after, but they've taken them, right? And it's really interesting how many young folks haven't. But I've always asked when I've talked to the folks that have taken it, is, hey, so you know what your personality type is, you know what your strengths are, you know what your weaknesses. How many of you have looked at your weaknesses and actually tried to improve upon them, right? Because if we can identify them, then we can move forward to maybe make ourselves a little bit that whole soldier concept or whatever the case may be. But it's really important to do so. And I would say so. The same thing applies because personality and mindset or identity are different. They're right. I mean, there's a personality type, but who am I? I mean, it's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey as I've watched people very close to me as we've made this transition together, and how really people have changed from the sergeant or lieutenant colonel or colonel that I've known through the military service to be Jim or John or Terry in real life. And you're like, man, that's crazy. So it's just a great points. And I'm going to make sure that tag those Herb. You need to do a post now. I don't remember seeing one on LinkedIn about it, but that has to be your next post. And if it already did it, do it again. But anyhow, so I'm going to dive in. I'm going to dive into some of the things that you've talked about in the past. I'm actually going to I'm going to stay the post, and then I'm going to type in some of the people that commented in the comments, and we'll work on tagging them at a different time. But I had Bill Kiefer on here a few weeks back, and it was a great conversation. I actually asked him a question about entitlement, and when I was going through, I don't remember if it was a couple days after I had that show or if it was the next day. I can't remember, but it was really close to it. And you had wrote that veteran entitlement versus veteran empowerment, and that created a lot of conversation within the post. And I kind of want to read what you wrote, if you don't mind me doing that, and then I'll. If you're not following Herb Thompson, well, do so. Find this post and go in there and engage in this post, because it's actually a really important post. And we'll get into the conversation about entitlement, but I want to read this post real quick from Herb. Herb writes, veteran entitlement versus veteran empowerment. One expects things to be handed to them. One leverages their service experience. One is reactive, one is proactive. One hurts the community, one helps the community. One builds walls, one builds bridges. One is negative, one is positive. Depending on how you interpret the lines above, you'll know which category you fit. I assess more will fall into the empowered category, as an entitled person doesn't get far in the military, nor will they outside of the military. And man, you had some really good engagement, plenty of comments. I'm gonna write to some of these folks in here because I really enjoyed their conversation. I mean, and it actually took on a life of its own, if you will, which happens regularly in your posts, which you almost you don't have to say another thing, although you do, you respond because it's respectful of the thing to do, right? But people engage with each other, which is good. So let's talk about that a little bit because that's a very important it's an important thing. I told Bill, I said, hey, listen, Bill, me personally, right? I didn't know anybody in Iowa. I didn't know anybody in Kansas. When I joined the military because I was a bad kid. Like I had no options because I created none for myself. My way out of where I was at was a one-way ticket to the United States Army. And at no point in time did I say I'm doing this to serve my country, to make people proud, and to save the lives of all of our citizens. Now, don't get me wrong, Herb. There are people that did just that. There are those folks that are patriotic and wanted to serve their country, and kudos to them. That being said, though, it hurts my heart to look at posts on LinkedIn, to have conversations with transition and service members, to listen to some of the stuff that's coming out of people's mouth as though you owe me this job because I saved your life. And that's kind of the way it comes out, whether or not that's how it's supposed to be. And I can understand the what sacrifices were made. But if they didn't do what you did, and that's meet basic core requirements of a job. If I want a job that's a master's level job, I can't expect to be given that job because I served my country. And when people say thank you for your service, but they don't give you the job, people get mad, right? They're like, they don't really care. They do, but there's basic requirements. So I want you to break down that post a little bit, if you don't mind, and just kind of go into what were you thinking at that time, and how did you analyze the entitled versus the empowered?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see it, right? I mean, society as a whole, I think, is getting more entitled, and that we can probably have a whole another 8,000-hour podcast on that. But it happens in the veteran community, right? And I think it's a couple of things, right? We hear "thank you for your service," and we go, "Oh, wow, they're thanking me." And some people will interpret that to be, "Thank you for your service. I'm offering you a job because you served our country." No, 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 no. I mean, some people may, but they're going to be few and far between. And then there's so much support for veterans. I mean, come on. Like I talk to people in other countries. We got room to improve here, just like in a lot of other stuff. We got room to improve on veteran causes. But my God, compared to other countries, it's amazing what we have. But that also gets that like, oh, there's all this stuff for me. I think part of it is like, hey, when I was in and I needed something done for my pay or my finance stuff or my personnel records or award, what did I do? I went to the admin shop and said, hey, dude, do this, right? Not liking that because I'm a nice guy, but and they did it. They did it for you, right? Or you went over here, hey, supply guy, give me that. There is a lot of that in the military of like people do stuff for you. And quite frankly, it's because you're a position or because they're supposed to. And then you come out and you're like, oh my God, yeah, people are going to still do stuff for me. Heck, no, nobody's doing anything for you. And I just see a lot of people with, and it is a lot. I'm not saying all there, but there is a sizable amount that have to make that mindset shift of like, let me change the aperture that I'm looking through and make that shift of like, I'm not entitled to anything. Now you are entitled to, if you have your retirement you've earned, or any entitlements you've earned, VA benefits. Go to the VA, get your health care, get education benefits like I use. Stuff that's the only thing you're earned. But I think so many people hear that, and I'll be frank, from my community on the special operations side, I'll just be frank. You get told you're a badass, right? And you start believing you're a bad. Really, that's the only way you're able to do your job. And then you get out, I'm like, yeah, I'm. Oh wait, nobody cares. You know what I mean? But it's a lot of things rolled up in there, but it is changing that mindset to go, okay, how do I, leverage my military service? How do I use that as a value proposition? How do I use that? Let's be real. I probably would not have gone into Cornell if it wasn't for my military service. Right. How did I leverage it? But I leveraged it. I didn't expect it. I leveraged said, hey, this is why this would make me a good student in your program and a good alumni. And they believe me. and I guess the jury's still out on that according to them. But no, seriously, I think that is leveraging it, but just expecting people, and I think it's very easy to get people get in some dark places during the transition. I think everybody does. Some people don't admit it. Some a little darker than other places, and you can really start to an us versus them, because there is a military civilian divide, right? Like there is a amount of people serving now. Unless someone has someone in their family or maybe a close friend serving, they don't really understand the military, and vice versa. We don't understand out there, so there's this divide, and it can only increase that divide. And it's just one of those things that I don't think it helps. It doesn't just, when I look at my job, not that I'm carrying the mantle for all veterans, but if I do something very wrong, that could be held against the next Green Beret or the next veteran and be like, oh man, we shouldn't hire one of them guys. It's just something you have to think about. Carry yourself with a little bit of pride, and it's good to be prideful of your service, but then, okay, what's next? What's the next mission?
That's great. I love it, man. And you had plenty of comments in that post, and I really, reading through a lot of them, most people agreed with you in one regard. And I know you talked about your community meeting, so for people that don't know, which most people do, obviously, when I read the title of the book, a special for Green Berets, approach to transition. So we know that soft community, the special operations community, could be what you would consider entitled, but I think that there's so many more, right? I think there's so many more, and it's I think that I understand the concept in which you're talking about, because they are, hey, that you are a badass, you have to do this. But I mean, infantrymen get treated like that. I mean, even a Marine infantryman, that I've got some funny stories about Marine infantrymen that I've met throughout my career that are just hilarious to me. But hearing the stories, but it's because they have to believe that they can run through this wall, because that's what they've been told, and they really believe it until the wall knocks them down. But nonetheless, understanding that and then getting out and trying to act in that manner, obviously it's not the greatest. But I will tell you something interesting, and you brought a point that's significant. I don't know who holds the entitlement more, junior people when they get out or senior people, right? And I would say that because as you've grown in the military and you've been around the ability to say, hey, supply sergeant, give me, hey, executive assistant, or whatever it may be, as you get more senior, you get more hands off of the do, and you get a lot of people to do, and you become an orchestrator of, and people are giving you things. So then when you leave, those maybe that mentality stays. I've listened to a lot of the transition folks, to include yourself, list a bunch of other ones that talk about transition in the military space, talk about humbling yourself, right? And I think removing the ego and truly embracing what the next step is. But I think that people say it, even the ones that say humble yourself, have yet to do so in a lot of ways. And it's interesting to me, because I don't know what the true what you really need to do to be humble in a certain sense. But you got to be thoughtful, and you got to really, it goes back to knowing who you are, going back into that identity and all that other stuff to figure out, where am I going to fit in this world, right? Who am I going to serve next, right? Because we served American people, we served our commanders, we served people. But what's our next service? Where's that going? And I think people like you, Herb, like myself, we're doing stuff outside of having conversation with transition and people. I know that's a lot of what you do as for your employment, but as far as this is concerned, this is a service. Right. For me, I'm doing it because I really enjoy having conversations with you and people like you that can actually share their experiences. So I think that if people ask themselves, who do I want? Who do I want to serve? What do I want to serve? They can figure their purpose. They could find out what it is they want to do. So many people just rely on my job in the military. If I'm an 18 Echo, a communicator, a special operations, a special forces communicator, what am I going to do outside? Besides, I mean, I could do some networking stuff. I could probably do some commo stuff, but there's a little bit more that comes along with 18 Echo than just comm stuff, right? But can they do more? Can they do other things? And I think that so many people line their MOS or job with their next career. And sometimes that's not really, that's just what they did, right? It's what they know. So they don't want to try to kind of take that jump off the cliff to do something different. What about you? As you've made your choice to go do something else, you're obviously not doing what you were doing in the military to the full extent of what you were doing in the military. I mean, obviously people would know that you were a drill sergeant, one drill sergeant of the year, first ever Green Beret and drill sergeant of the year. You're a hero. That's awesome. But what but what else? Like, so what are you specifically doing now? And how does that correlate with your military service? Are you doing anything that is in line with that?
Yeah, I'm running unconventional warfare in countries around, and jump master. And no, I mean, is there stuff? Yes, but like if you look at what is a special forces team sergeant, no, but oh wow, special forces team sergeant leads a cross-functional team of leaders, solves complex problems dealing with key stakeholders. Yes, so I am doing it. Now, is it a direct? No, to be in a tech company and then to have been, a special force team sergeant. No, but there is, right. And I think it's just seeing that, and being like, what was that? And to me, I look back at when I'd go with my Indige. I loved working with the Indige. That's why I wanted to be a Green Beret. That's what fires me up. I had to learn their culture and get into it and really just soak it up and be accepted. And that was my safety. That's how I stayed alive. Was the better I knew their culture, the better they accepted me. And it was fun, but I looked at it that way as that was my safety, right? That is how I stayed alive. That is everything. It's the same thing now. Learn the new culture, adapt into it, bring my strengths, bone up my weaknesses, get them improved, and keep doing good stuff. And I just look at it like that, man. This dude, I'm on my whatever deployment, right? It's just I'm in the United States, but the same stuff I use and it really comes to mindset, right? I never once went in with my Indige overseas, went me American flag, gun, airship, yeah. Like that would not have worked, right? I had to build trust. I had to do relationship building. I had to learn about them, get them, trust is earned. And by doing that, then they would be like, okay, yeah, we'll listen to this guy. Because I mean, we're talking about like, hey, we're going into war, follow me, right? And it's like, just because you got American flag, no. Now maybe just because you got medevac and that air support, but a lot of it was just that trust and building relationships. And truthfully, I think that is most business, right? Most business is building relationships so you have trust. So people either buy from you, people will sell to you, people will work with you, people will help you on a that's across every industry. It's establishing trust and building relationships.
No doubt. And I'm going to get back to I want to talk about a conversation from that post you had, but I want to touch on this relationship conversation, specifically because we are streaming to LinkedIn. We are streaming to Facebook. Hey, listen, if you're watching on Facebook, there's a little thing above this thing that says, if you want your name to be seen, you got to click this link to approve. So we had a Facebook user. I don't know who you are. I wish I did. But if you approve that, then I can know who you are and I can say, thank you for the comment. But anyway, real quick. So you talk about relationship building. And LinkedIn obviously is that tool that people are using. It's a great way to be. I mean, we met. I mean, you and I have never stood eye to eye. Like I don't know how tall you are specifically, Herb, but I've seen your pictures, so I could only imagine. I'm a 6'1", 225 type guy. You seem in my mind, and I don't seem like I'm that tall, but I'm 6'1", 225. But you seem like you're about 6'5", 245. So I'm glad we've met virtually. I'd be a little intimidated, right? But
yeah, let's not break that myth. We'll keep those numbers.
but nonetheless, right? So we talk about relationship building, and we're doing things more on virtual mediums nowadays, specifically because I mean, I don't know if it's just because of COVID. Obviously, that escalated it very quickly. But it's interesting because there's a lot of sales, and I'm not going to get into sales and marketing on social norms and mediums and stuff like that. But there's a lot of value in all of the things, right? There's value in likes, and there's value in shares, and there's value in views, and that's really good. Views help you if you're trying to sell a product where that people like a commercial, right? I can watch a commercial at a Super Bowl that they pay $6 million for 30 seconds. I don't get to interact with it, but I see it, which allows me to want to buy it. And that's kind of what views do, right? Which is cool. And you can sell views. But relationships don't happen from viewing, from sharing, and from liking. Relationships are built through interaction. And that's what I wanted to get to the point of you doing what's right by having commented to everybody that comments on your stuff. That's interaction. That's how you build relationships. And I love what you do in that regard because, well, you talk all the time about any show I've watched you on, my own show that we had last year when you were here. It's always talked about building relationships. And that is for all of you LinkedIn users out there or any social media platform for that matter. Build a relationship and you have to interact. You can't expect someone to like or share because that's just instant gratification to make you feel good about yourself to say, yeah, buddy. They didn't even look at your stuff. They just liked it because it's you. Anyway, hey, there was a conversation within your post about the entitlement and empowerment. And the conversation was between, I don't want to mess up people's names, but I might. I'm not going to mess up this one. But Sean Hurd, Tom Hall, and we're going back and forth. And then you came in, and there was a couple more replies in it. Justin Baucom, I think his name is. And you were talking about basically the expectation for soft vets when they talk about being project managers and wanting $100,000 at a minimum and all that stuff. And there's some things saying, yeah, that's right, that you should watch your expectations. Then I think it was Justin who came in and said, well, based on your skill set, based on the way Herb just articulated what his job was and how you cross-pollinated and made sure it was articulated what the nuances of your military job were with that of what you do and to your current job. That is kind of where the price range is for even an entry level project manager in certain locations, obviously.
Right.
So I liked that conversation because one said one thing and there was discord. I mean, there was a disagreement, if you will, on philosophy, but it was very professional. Thank you so much. I didn't realize that, and it was a conversation that was very clean and by the way, eye-opening for someone who might be in your world, Herb, as their 18 series guys, Sergeant First Class, Mass Sergeant, Sergeant's Major, and they're getting out and they can set their expectations. What do you say about expectation, though? I mean, from what Herb is doing what Herb is doing, should I expect Herb to follow in your footsteps if I'm the same MOS with the same pay grade, potentially with the same degree? Should I expect that I'm going to find your job and make that money with you? The same?
The best answer ever. It depends, right? Do you put in the work? It isn't, at the end of the day, I don't care what you've done before. You could be an astronaut, how do you articulate your value? And if you can articulate your value and demonstrate that, then yeah, maybe you can follow my footsteps. I'll say, hey, don't follow my footsteps. Use as a guidepost and go, hey, I'm going to do my own thing. This is what I learned from it, and I'm going to do my own path. But yeah, you can, yeah. I mean, it's just, you got to work, man. I think that's what so many people don't understand is you got to work and you got to get out there and bust your butt, just like how you were as a little snot-nosed recruit at the beginning. Get in there, work hard, soak up information, learn, in this case, articulate your value, show why you're experienced. Because a lot of people don't understand. I don't care if you're a grunt, a pilot, whatever, you're pivoting to a different career. People don't understand the direct correlation of what it is. So you got to articulate that. And if you do that, yeah, you can be successful. But you define success. I don't define your success. Nobody else does. It's you. If you want to go make 40K and, work on mountain bikes, fine. That's what you like. That's what you love. That's what you're happy and it sustains you. Cool. I think that's a big thing with social media. I'm quite frank. I see on LinkedIn, man, like if you could put on a cool picture and it looks really cool, you're going to get more likes and more whatever. And it's like, okay, like that is where the world's coming. But like, how much of that is real? How much? Oh yeah. That, or Instagram is probably worse. I don't have Instagram. I used to, but you see people all the time and you're like, yeah, I know this stuff's fake. I don't know how photoshopped it is or whose Lamborghini they borrowed, but it's fake. What is and I mean, we're dealing with our teenagers of seeing that out there in the world, not just transition military, teenagers going, hey, this is what I see on social media. This must be the norm. And it's like, no, that's not normal.
Yeah. And it's, that is actually a really crazy situation. I try, what I don't do well, right? Just like 99.9% of people on social media anyway, because the 0.1% that do, guess what you hear? Man, I hate listening to that person. So what we don't do well on social media is talk about the bad stuff. We highlight the good. We talk about our family when they're doing good stuff. We talk about our job or our business or our whatever. We highlight the good stuff. And when we don't highlight, or when the bad stuff is happening, we don't bring it out there. And I really want to be transparent with people. However, I got to tell you why I think I don't. I'm not concerned, Herb. I'm an open book. I'll tell you some stuff that would make you be like, you might not want to say that out loud. I don't care. I mean, I really don't care. I've got my wife, I got my kids, I got my friends who know the things in which I've done or not done in life. And I'm not really looking to expand that from a friendship perspective. Now, all that being said, what I get frustrated about is why I don't do it is because that one person who does share, they share everything. They share when they're sick. They share when their boyfriend or girlfriend has left or whatever the case would be. Everybody sits there and says, whether it's private messaging or otherwise, man, this person's a downer. I don't want to, or they say some stuff like, hey, stop sharing your whole life or whatever they say. So it's like a negative thing, but maybe that's their outlet. But we don't do a good job of being transparent too much on the social media place. My daughter is the same, and we got the kids the same. I mean, I have a 16-year-old daughter, my 15-year-old son, and they see stuff and they're like, man, I want to do this. I'm like, that's not even a real thing. Like, I mean, listen, I'm telling you, it's not even a real thing. Stop watching this crap because you're killing me, man. I want to get rid of all of it. But anyway, I think that's what but I think that's for transition people kind of feel because they see what we're doing, Herb, what you're doing, the Bill Kiefers of the world, the Michael Quinns of the world. There's a million lists of people that are putting out information that says, hey, this is real. I'm telling you this. These are the real life questions that I'm fielding every day. You know, people that do their work on Veterati and they're doing great things like Bruce Thompson. There's just so many great folks out there. They're giving real advice on this platform that they hear, and then they give the answers that the best suits them, and then they put it out there because they're trying to help. But man, it is crazy, and I like the fact that in LinkedIn, in this transition space, we have people like you that provide that straightforward information because it's useful and needed. Hey, so here's another thing you had put out there, and I I find it funny, and you'll know why in a second. But here it is. You quoted, "Not being a veteran, how do I speak with one?" Me. This was a question someone asked to you, and you said, just like you would with any other person, be respectful and don't act like you know them or their experiences. It's that simple. Wouldn't the world be a better place if we all engage each other in this manner, right? And it's interesting that you said that. I found it to be a great post. It generated a lot of conversation. And it's funny because most of the conversation was people from the veteran space that were obviously speaking about how do I speak to them? I mean, I don't know how to talk to them. And it's funny because, Herb, have you ever, and this is just a question, and you can, I mean, please, I know you'll be honest, so I don't have to ask you to be honest. Have you ever had a uncomfortable conversation with someone who wasn't in the military just because of the way they acted towards you? I mean, when they approached you, they didn't know how to approach you. So you were like, yo, bro, I'm Herb, man. Let's just talk. What's up?
Yes, I have, but ironically, I guess, maybe ironically is not the right word. I've had more of those awkward conversations with other veterans than I have with, non-veterans. But yeah, I've had them. I mean, let's be real. Like I said earlier, people are the civil military divide. People don't know. They see what's on TV, and then they're like, "Oh, that." And there's some like, "Hey, did you kill someone?" It's like, "Do you want to know that answer? Do you want to know?" But that's like the obvious one, right? And truthfully, that doesn't happen often, but it comes up, right? The more awkward ones have been people that are in the military. And I know what they did in the military. And I'm not in no mean putting them down or doing anything, but they look at me like, "Hey, you got PTSD, right? Right? Because of what you saw? Because I do." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. We could talk about it, but don't assume that I'm something just because I was a Green Beret or something." And people have PTSD. That is not my intention. It's just, don't assume that, or don't assume, wow, all of us are broke. Now, physically, I'll tell you that. Yeah, most of us are. Hey, there's some studs and studettes out there. But yeah, all of us, people were meant to do what we did and see what we did. So all of us think that. But then again, it's like, wait, is he crazy? No, so I think just be normal. Just be normal and talk to people, right? I talk to my neighbor, right? I don't have a clue if he ever served or not. And I don't think he has a clue if I served or not. I don't care. We chat, we wave. He has a tree fall down, I'll help him. I have a tree fall down, he'll come over, help saw it up. We just get along being normal people. Why can't we do that on, like that? I don't need to know. I think where a lot of it with the veteran to veteran things, it becomes a measuring stick of like, oh, what was your service? I give a care if you were a cook for 2 years. Thank you for serving. Cool. I'll shake your hand just like I will somebody who has special operations for 20 years. Thank you for serving. You signed up, did your part. Okay, cool. And I get from both sides who don't like me thinking that way, but it is, if you're still being judged by your service, what do you got to look forward to, right? What are you doing now? Now, granted, hey, I'll say, hey, I'm Green Beret, right? Because guess what? People go, They look, right? They're like, oh my God, I'll at least listen to this guy for a few minutes. So it's just, it's one of those things that, like, just talking to them. But I've had civilians be like, hey, I don't know how to talk about it. And truthfully, most times it's they're worried about offending, right? They don't want to say the wrong thing. It was nothing negative of like, oh, they really were concerned, and especially in that case, and didn't know what to say. And it was like, just be normal. Don't, would you ask anyone else if they killed someone? Would you ask anyone else, like, hey, what was it like to not shower for 2 weeks, or what was it, whatever, you know what I mean? You wouldn't ask that. So why ask the veteran?
No doubt. And I love that answer. I think it's interesting because I too have found that those conversations are very awkward when it's the veteran to veteran, right? And I think that there's a level of comfort from a veteran to veteran, meaning that I can say whatever I want, right? But it's still interesting to me, especially when we're talking about networking, right? When we have conversations about, hey, listen, there's a networking event, we should go. Well, are there going to be any veterans there? I'm sure there'll be a couple. And these are conversations that I've had in real life, in real time too. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but well, what do I say? I'm like, man, listen, just say, like, when you go to a new unit, I don't care what your background is. I'll tell you, it's usually the person that's receiving you, right, that breaks the ice and makes it a very normal conversation, right? So I don't care if you're an SF guy, if you're a Force Recon Marine, or just a grunt, right? It doesn't matter. You don't go to your new unit, find your sergeant major or your first sergeant or someone that's a supervisor and walk in and be like, hey, did X, Y, and Z, and say some stupid random stuff off the wall. You do an introduction. I am so and so, and if they say some off the wall stuff, you may respond with some off the wall stuff. But in just meeting, there aren't very many organizations within the military in 2022 or all the way back to 2017 where you walk in and instantly just say some random stupid stuff that puts you on a target for someone just to crush you for the rest of the time you're at that organization. So it's always interesting to me. I'm like, man, just ask them what they do. I mean, just have a regular conversation. Introduce yourself. When you go home to mom and dad, or when you go see Aunt and Uncle Jimmy or whatever their names are, do you act just foolish? And maybe you do. Maybe that's not home training, but I typically find that most military folks, especially from an outward appearance, speak relatively kindly. You know, I mean, they have a way that they hold themselves and they're respectful. So it shouldn't be much of an issue, but it is. That's where the issue is. And then on the flip of that, though, Herb, I have heard some off the wall stuff by some civilian folks that are never served to say things not in the first breath, right? But in a very short conversation, oh, you're over there with whatever, and you do this, and you're like, yeah, sure. I mean, what do you want? I mean, do you want to talk about this for real? I mean, no, I mean, it doesn't matter, right? But it's crazy. That happens few and far between. But I mean, I wouldn't say it wouldn't happen. I actually heard something about interviewing where someone asked a question to a veteran about specific things. Are you suicidal? Have you killed someone? And these are in interviews, and that's not those aren't interview questions. That's not proper to ask anybody, right? I mean, that's just
exactly.
And and as a matter of fact, I know that individual reported them to the HR department. It was a big deal. But I was like, wow, that's interesting, but no, not real. I do want to there is one more, and I got to find it because it was important. It was important for me, and I don't want to lose it because it was actually a really, really good post you posted. But in the interim, while I'm looking for it, I just wanted to find what it was. But in the interim, hey Herb, what do you do? Like, so now you're employed in this transition world that you're working with. I mean, I saw you on a soft podcast not too long ago talking about transition. What are you working on right now in the transition space as whether it's volunteering your time, just where you're talking on LinkedIn and provide, what are you doing now in the transition space specifically?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, the job description was wrote for me, right? That's the way I felt. Was I'm not working, man. I'm doing what I love to do. I'm doing what I was doing on LinkedIn. I was doing what I would do on my free time. It's just helping mentor transitioning veterans. And we have a skill bridge program. We have some other programs here at Service Now. Awesome tech company with this a great culture, offering pathways to a career. And I get to talk with transitioning service members or veterans and military spouses every day, a handful every day. Talk to them about our program, talk to them if it's a good fit for them. And then, a rewarding thing is at the end of it, man, when they start getting the job offers coming out of the program. And 2 times this week, or in the last week, like one of the people in our program got a job offer, and then someone I've quasi mentored, even though they're senior to me, when they retired out of the military, accepted a job offer, right? I was happier for them too than I was when I got my own job offer. I'm just excited for them of like, wow, that's awesome. I could do that every day. So I love it, man. I couldn't be in a happier place. I get to focus on this and like, hey, how can I help one more? How can I help one more? And I also don't get down of like, oh, I couldn't help. Hey, combat triage. I'm gonna save as many as I can, right? I'm gonna help as many as I can, as long as I can, and that's what I'm getting to do. So it's awesome.
I love the fact that I've got to see you in different places. I know I bring you into Tampa's 4 block program when we do that to speak to the transition and service members that are in that program. I know you've been connected to 4 block in other cities as well.
Yep.
There are other nonprofit organizations and this type of organization that'll bring you in and speak. Obviously, your perspective on transition has always been, I mean, it's just really good because it's wholesome. It's genuine as upfront. And I think we all know the variables exist. So not everything that Herb Thompson says about transition is spot on for everybody. But
Yep.
the good thing about what Herb Thompson does say is that it might not resonate with everybody, but it starts the wheels to turn. And I think that's the saying that we keep hearing, and it's fine, is you don't know what you don't know, right? That's what everybody says. And it's a very factual statement. It's almost like a statement that you don't have to say. We know that you don't know it. I mean, so, but at the end of the day is when Herb says something and I read it on LinkedIn or I see it somewhere through a conversation, it makes me think, where do I want to be? Where do I not want to be? Is he saying something? If Herb's talking about working at X company doing this thing, yeah, that doesn't seem like something I'm interested in. But identifying what you don't want to do is equally as important as identifying what you do want to do. And so
Right.
I love when you say stuff, man. I do. And not everything you say resonates with me. I can disagree with some of the things you say, but at the end
You
of the
should.
day, I respect you wholeheartedly. And I think that your points are so great. I mean, again, you're that guy, Herb, that if I'm talking to someone, I say, hey, you're not following Herb Thompson on LinkedIn or connecting with him, then you're making a mistake, because not only is your network strong, it does a lot of great things for you, and you do a lot of great things for it, and it moves the person to the next rung, right, on the ladder. So, hey, real quick, Chief Griffith, thank you. Appreciate you coming and stopping by. I definitely appreciate it. If you're not following Herb, follow him. I know you are, so I'm not going to tell you to follow him, but that's for everybody else, right? Anyway, hey, so you have one. There's a tip you put on here about. We talked about interviews, and we kind of skimmed over them in words without talking about it. But you talked about virtual interviews, do's and don'ts, and I want to go over those because in 2022, Herb, there are very few, if any. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I have not heard of a single individual who's been into a building to have an interview. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I've only talked to about 400 people, not 4,000. So at this point, a lot of, if not majority of interviews are being done right like this. You and I, we're having an interview. So I want to go over some of your tips on the do's and don'ts. I'll go with the do's first and we can talk about it. And then we'll go through the don'ts, because I'm telling you, you're not saying those don'ts because they haven't happened, right? And that's the funny part, which is we'll get into those. So the do's, here are the do's. Treat it like an in-person interview. Be prepared, dress appropriately, which means if you're dressing for the job you're trying to get, not for just hanging out on the block or whatever the case may be. But and if it's Google, maybe you don't have to dress up. But if it's for a real job, I don't want to say Google is not a real job for any Google workers. But anyway, dress appropriately, have a good internet connection. Huge, right? Huge internet connection. Be free from distractions. Have a cleaner virtual background. Keep your response concise. Have your equipment charged or plugged in. Have your camera on and show some energy. Let's talk about all those. I don't know if you remember them off the top of your head, but we can get into them. And if you need a reminder, I'll throw it out there. But I think they're pretty basic and they're important. Because I think at this point, we all seen maybe the video of the lawyer who's has to go to court with the judge, but he's got a cat filter on, and he's like, "Judge, I'm ready to go. I'm not a cat." That was the funniest thing I've seen. But it's equally as important, right? We're going into an interview, so let's talk about some of those dues, man.
Yeah, I mean, do you want the job or not? Right? I don't know. I'm going to prepare. I'm going to think like I want to act like I'm here. I'm excited for this. And let's be real, it's harder. And I'll just start the energy, right? It's harder in a virtual environment right now. It's harder than if we were in a room, right? You can't read the room. You're not feeling it. There's just that you feel the energy. It's harder. So you got to bring a little bit more on here. Treat it just like a regular one. You would prepare for it. You would set time. You would get there early. You would do some research. You would do all. You do the same. Dress appropriately. Now, usually I'm wearing shorts, so maybe, hey, from the waist down, no, but hey, dress appropriate for what it's supposed to be. Not saying suit and tie, whatever it's supposed to be, you know. And I think, little things like internet connection. Don't try to do it on your phone. I'll just be the first one to say that, because that always goes bad. Don't be trying to do it if you want the job. Don't be doing it on your phone. Don't make sure you have internet, because you never know what's going to happen. Like, I'm unplugged right now, but I know my computer lasts for about 12 hours without plugging in, so we're going to be fine. It's just like little simple things. I think a lot of times transition military, let's be real, I haven't done a lot of interviews, so they don't really think about it. And quite frankly, I think people doing interviews are not experienced, maybe doing virtual interviews. They've been out in the workforce for 10, 15 years, and they've done mostly in-person interviews. And they're like, oh, I can kind of, this is just a casual conversation with my best. No, it's not. It's like, no, be free of struggles. The one thing I will say is, hey, I think everybody at this point has seen a kid come running through, right? It's going to happen. No one's ever going to, most people won't hold against you if a kid comes running in or in the background, but like, you should know that. But I tell you what, if you got a shotgun right here and you got your dirty laundry over here and it's your bed and who knows what's on that bed, you could just blur your background and nobody knows. But yeah, it seems like silly little innocent stuff to me, but at the end of the day, you're trying to make an impression. You're trying to get them to say, you're the one. Don't leave it to chance.
And I love the fact that you said do some research on the company. You would do that if you were going in person. If you, for anybody watching, LinkedIn has a great tool that you can practice interviews on virtually. So if you're not tracking that, I'll put it in the comments so that you can find the way to get to it. It's very simple. I'm not going to walk through it right now for you, but it is a great tool to use. I think what's interesting, her, because I've actually heard from two hiring managers who interviewed two of them. I talked to a bunch, but two of them specifically said in their interview, they did have kids come through. And it's interesting because the reaction to because both of these people did the same thing. They picked up their child and they held them on their lap and said, please be quiet, I'm talking. And the child was fine. But they showed them that they were a family person. They showed them that they weren't going to beat their child for interrupting this god awful important thing. But it just was different. And why they said it is because on the values of both their companies, on their website, in the very front page, it talks about family. It's one of the biggest things that they pride themselves on. So whether it was a planned or intended thing, who knows, right? But and if it is, those two should be writing books about that. But at the end of the day, that's important. But to understand that is huge. Now, if it doesn't say family, don't pick up your kid. Mush them like the guy did on the video in the UK. Don't really do that either. Anyway, so good deal. So we talked about some do's, and I think that the do's of online interviewing is very similar to that of in person, but there are some technical things to discuss and they're important, right? So just so you're tracking, I got an Ethernet cable connected to my router directly from this room through the wall to my router, one long thing. So I didn't have to have repeaters or anything crazy. And I didn't want Wi-Fi because I had that and it was I'd pause, freeze, and it was frustrating me, especially doing something like this. And I don't want to freeze with a weird face like that, or herb fry. Exactly right. And then we look silly. But at the end of the day, I think that has to be a thought process. If we're moving into this virtual space and you're going to be doing, whether you're working from home regularly, you may want to start thinking about the technical aspect of what you have to do before you have an interview, because it does not look well if it goes well or goes wrong. Sometimes they don't hold it against you either, especially if you can reschedule and come right back in. But nonetheless, good do's. Let's talk about the don'ts. Don't treat it as a call with your bestie. Have no clue about the company or the role. Don't be unprofessional. Don't act like Verizon ad. Can you hear me now? Over and over and over. Don't put the interviewer on hold. Don't show off your guns, dirty laundry, etc. Don't ramble on forever when answering like I do. Don't start with a dying battery. Don't hide behind a blank screen. Don't fall asleep or look like you're about to. What would you add? And there were several comments, and that's what I liked, is that there were several people that commented about it. It's someone said pants, definitely wear pants, but you said never, right? And that's her. But listen, man, I want to tell you how important that statement is, and it's important because someone says wear pants, and why they say wear pants, not because someone's going to tell you on the other side, hey, Herb Thompson, stand up while we're doing this interview. That's not going to happen. However, sometimes what do? We forget, and we want to go grab our drink that we left over here, and we stand up, and then here we are with our undies on or whatever craziness is. But so on those don'ts, what do you think is probably the most important thing don't do whatsoever?
Wow. I mean, I think obviously putting the interviewer on hold, right? Like, hey, if you seriously want this job, you should be talking to me. I get life events happen that may be something different, but when you go and start talking, or just put it on hold, mute it, and you see them answering a phone call, unless you come back going, hey, this was my kid's school. I was worried that they were like seriously injured or something. I get that. Well, more than likely not, you're probably doing your job, or you're just doing, don't, I would say that's a big one, man. You're just going to turn people off to do that. I think a lot, it's always about you're trying to impress, right? So what's in your background? Just blur it. I mean, it's so easy to like, hey, people don't need to see your dirty drawers, right? They don't need to see that. I think there's so many there that, you know, and probably one of the worst ones is the not conciseness. And I know it's hard. It's hard to talk about yourself, and you want to get all the information out there so they understand your value. But let's be real, everybody's got attention. We do, all of us do. Why are commercials how they are? Why do 30-second videos get more views than something that's 10 minutes? A lot of times it's that attention span. And when you start out, hey, just tell me a little bit about, that happens in most interviews, right? Tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, I was born in, I'm like, oh crap. We're going to be here a while. We're going to be here a while. It already sets the tone for that. So just have that concise. Again, what is your value? If at any point, now there can be variables here, but if at any point in time you're talking more than 2-3 minutes, you're wrong, because you weren't able to articulate, answer their question, show like, hey, what was the situation? This is what I did. This was the results, or something about a past experience. If you're still talking for 2-3 minutes, it's wrong. 2-3 minutes go, boom. That is a learned skill. A lot of times, practice, right? Practice. I was telling our cohort today, the best mock interview is a real interview. Go apply places and interview. That's your best mock interview, so you can work some of these kinks out, because it is, you get better of talking about yourself and your value proposition as it goes. And I think the other times, a lot of times, you know, some people will throw in a question that there isn't a right answer, right? Or maybe it's made up and they just want to see if the person's blowing smoke. Hey, if you don't know, you don't know. It's just, man, interviews, and it's hard, right? How many interviews you get with a company? A lot of companies, you may get 1, you may get 2, 3, or 4. That's the deciding factor whether you're going to work there, and you're going to work remotely. If you're working remotely, hey, the internet connection, all that stuff better be working, or else they're going to be like, well, do they have the internet connection that works when we actually need them to work? So I think there's a lot of things we don't necessarily think about, and a lot. My girlfriend and I talk about this now that we have teenagers. You're going to be about to hear soon, if you're not, teaching a kid how to drive a car. Oh, man, I can do this. But how much
killing me, man?
How much stuff do we do and we don't think about? And then when you go to teach a kid, you're like, hey, do this. And you're like, oh, wow. Like, why did you almost run us off the road? Well, oh, I forgot to tell you about 90 other things I was doing that just became commonplace. So it's just thinking, slowing down a little bit, thinking of, and really it's contingencies. What could go wrong? Let me solve that problem beforehand. And it's nothing to be worried about, right? Like, nobody's going to come out and shoot you if you don't do well on an interview. You just sit there and have a conversation, but do it in a manner that shows your value proposition, shows your personality, and it's just using the brain, man.
Oh yeah. So I like the interview conversation, right? I think this is probably, this to me is a more important discussion than the resume. My personal opinion. Don't get me wrong. I mean, resumes get you in the door, but so does a conversation with someone important, right? Because networking does that for me as well.
No.
So I'd rather spend more time talking to you about the interview process, which we tend not to talk about much. We talk days, months, years about how to write the proper resume, but I don't want to do that. So what I want to ask you is, if Herb Thompson is getting ready to prepare for an interview, what are some of the things that you do going into a place? Let's just say you're interviewing at my company. I have a make-believe company. I do have a real one, but you can't work there, Herb. No, I'm kidding. I have a company, and I want you to. It's a tech-based company, but just hypothetically, you're going to be a project manager. How do you prepare to come to have this conversation with me?
Yeah, especially if I know it's with you. It'll change a little bit, and I'm gonna digitally stalk you. And I don't mean that in a negative manner. I did this for not my company. I was also months ago looking at another company. The guy had done some podcasts. Guess what I did? Listened to it over and over, took notes. I looked at some articles, some interviews he had been quoted in. I looked at that. I went and did my research. I wanted to know who I was talking to because I could. Now, if it's not available, it's not available. And that isn't always the case. This person just happened to be in the C suite of a very well known large company. And I digitally stalk, but LinkedIn, right? Look in LinkedIn. I'm always looking, what is ways I can, hey, here we go, relationship again. Oh, you went to there? I went to there too. Maybe I can somehow bring that up in an interview. Or I see you like fishing. Guess what? I like fishing. Whatever it is, figure it out. Are you like running? I can tell you how much I hate running, but I used to do running all the time. There's little things that help create a bond with a person through the screen, and that's what I research. Also research the company. I want to know what is their culture like, but not just what is written on the walls, but what are they really saying? What is their goals for the next year? What's their vision? What's the CEO saying? All of that is intel to me. That is an intel packet for me for this mission of let me find all the information, and then I'm going to talk to as many people as I can. Let me talk to some people if you got time. Talk to people. When I say you got time. I'm saying if the interview is tomorrow and you find today, you don't have time. But if you got a couple of weeks, talk to some people. Just, hey, what's the normal process there? What's day to day like? What do you do? What do you think? And you can help prepare. That way, you're just that better suited to articulate your value.
No doubt. And everything you said, I love it because I do the same thing. By the way, I'm not a cyber stalker in a negative way. I like to know who I'm talking to. Bottom line is this: before you and I ever had our first conversation on a microphone, before we were on a thing, I knew a little bit about you. I listened to you talk. I'm a little bit more comfortable talking to you right now because of those things I did right on the very first time. Because I didn't know you, but I felt like I did. And I think that a lot of times what we fail to do is understand that there is a way that we can level the playing field. So you're an enlisted Army guy. So for enlisted Army guys out there, we can have this conversation because you'll understand it specifically. Some of y'all have experienced this, but enlisted Army guys that have climbed the ranks have experienced it. From E4, E5, E5, E6, you sat on a promotion board. There was a Soldier of the Month board, Soldier of the Quarter board, and all these boards that you went to. You were the Drill Sergeant of the Year, so you sat on some boards there. I think what's interesting is that it's a very nerve-wracking experience on this side of the table. When you walk in, you knock on the door first, then you walk in and you do all these things that you're told to do, and you sit down. You got 3, 4, 5, however many people are sitting across the table from you, prepared to just pummel you with questions, right? There's a time when they ask you in the beginning, typically, tell me about yourself, and that's good. That's a time for you to breathe. It's not a time for you to go and speak your, like Herb said, well, I was born in, and that's not good. I mean, you use that time, but prepare for that. I mean, there's elevator pitches. Give the prominent things. Give the what I did, what I'm doing, and what I want to do. That's pretty easy, and it can be repeated several times, so it actually doesn't sound robotic. It can be very fluid, right? But the other thing that's important is there's an opportunity, typically, in any interview, any board, that someone says to you, do you have any questions for the board members or any questions for the interviewers? And at that time, this is not your time to play stump the chump and show them that you're smarter than their company. You probably won't get the job. But this is your time to say, hey, I've seen your values. Tell me a little bit about this project. Your CEO says this. Here's the thing, and this is why I talk about leveling the playing field. Typically, the person interviewing you hasn't done any homework, right? Meaning that they haven't researched because they're not being interviewed. So you don't want to stump them with questions that are going to make them look stupid. But you want to ask them questions that you feel is going to give you a better shot for them to see that you really were wanting the job because you did your homework. Anyway, hey, real quick, and I don't want to interrupt or continue, but hey, Ellis, thanks for coming by. I truly appreciate you stopping in and hanging out with us, but I appreciate the comment. Thank you so much. But yeah, man, so I think leveling the playing field in a good way, not trying to, again, play stuff to chump, but having the ability to show them. I mean, they may ask you, right, Herb? They may say, hey, what are the values of said company? What are our goals? What is the vision? They may ask that question, but most of the time they're probably trying to get a little bit more feel of who you are, understand your personality, your cult. Are you a cultural fit? Do you know your job that you're applying for? Excuse me. But there comes a time where I want you to know that I know your company. I've been following your company for 6 years. I've been wanting to be in. I could have applied at 25 jobs. I didn't. I applied at this job, and this is why, because I love what you do. I love who you are, and I love where you're going. And you don't have to say it in that manner. You can, but I mean, I just think there's a big, and I think you could do that this way or virtually. I think you can do it in person. And I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is prepare yourself for the opportunity that's presented to you. You know what I mean? That's my thought. What any feelings on that?
Yeah, it is. And I don't be scared if you can't find the information. Let's be real. There's some people like you just can't find the information. If you're going to interview with me, you can spend hours upon hours and days reading and listening to podcasts, watching videos. There's other people you may not be able to find anything. That's okay. But you can find out about the company, maybe that organization within the company. There's some stuff you can do to, like you said, level that playing field. And the more they feel like you know the company, who's going to be mad about that? That better positions you. Oh, you know more about the company? Okay, cool. Or hey, I saw this, and not just hey, I saw your CEO said we're gonna make $10 billion this year or whatever. Like, no, have some like, oh, I saw that. How is that affecting your daily operations? Has it changed? Right? Has it changed your strategy for where you're going in this case, 2022? The simple little stuff that just a little bit of preparation makes you sound way smart.
No doubt. And so here's something I've heard. I never experienced this personally, but I've heard it, right? I think that a lot of us, when I say us, the veteran community itself, I think that we typically call ourselves, we solve complex problems, right? I think that there's a lot. I mean, you said it earlier, Herb, but you're not the first person. It's kind of like if you go look at almost every headline on a veteran and it's transitioning or has, it's kind of like the catchphrase, we solve complex problems. And that's fine. That's good. I would tell you, based on what I've heard, I'd love for someone to tell me otherwise, whether it be through comment or an email or whatever the case may be. But I've heard that they really don't want you to solve their complex problems at the interview. What I mean by that is it's interesting that we feel, and if you're hired as a consultant, then obviously you might want to go in and talk about a problem that you found and do some things, and then this is how we're going to attack it. But on the interview, I don't know if it's always the right answer to say, listen, you've had a lot of overturn in this area. What I would do is come in there and do this, as if you're running something, which means that everybody that's been there up until this point hasn't been able to do it. And now you're going to tell this organization how jacked up they are, and you're the one who's solving this complex
You're the
problem.
savior.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's a way to articulate that in a manner that doesn't sound so, I don't want to say overbearing, but almost cocky. There's a confidence in it, but there's a little bit of a, what the hell have you all been doing for the last 30 years in your business? I've been over here fighting for my country, and you guys are making this business fall, yet and still they're billion-dollar organizations, right? So I just think that that's what I've heard. I mean, I don't know your thoughts on that, but I don't think that it's probably the right answer to walk in there and tell them how you're going to make an impact day one by changing the whole culture of their organization.
No, unless you got very good information and intel, inside advice that said, "Hey, they're really looking for how you're going to come in and shake it up." But I it goes back to my girlfriend uses this analogy, and I love it. The company's looking for a red apple. You better be the red apple. You got to match, just like little kids, the match game, right? You better articulate both on the resume, but more importantly in the interviews, like you said, how are you the red apple for that job description? Not the fact that you're the most amazing thing ever and you're going to do this. If it has nothing to do with that job, why are they paying you that job, right? So literally just it seems so simple. Match red apple to red apple. My resume, my interview answers and material based on that job description. Now, a lot of job descriptions suck. I'll be the first one to say that, right? I mean, it might as well be written in German, and I don't read German. Yeah. But you could talk to people in the company. So you see the job description, and if it says, hey, required skills, they're required. Like, you better be hitting them up there and talking about it both in your resume and in your interview questions. and then talk to people in it. Because sometimes they're like, yeah, that's what the job description says, but really this is what it is. And this is what the actual people are looking for. Because if they're interviewed, they may not even have looked at the job description. They just know what the job is at the company.
Yep. That's it. That is a huge tip, Herb. I hope all y'all listening just got that. Now, talking to the people at the company, I'm not going to name any company names, but there's titles and job descriptions that aren't relevant, right? And what I mean by that is you hear this title, like if you were to say vice president, right? That sounds pretty cool because in America, there's only one real vice president, right? That's it. And then in a company, guess what? In some companies, that's a huge deal, but in many companies, not a big deal. And it's just because we're looking for title, and then we look at the job description, and because it is so foreign and generalized, we go with that. You are allowed. I want to make sure I'm going to speak this very clearly. You are allowed to reach out to any organization and or people within it and talk to them. Like, do it. So if you're looking for, and I'll just say Lodix, whatever, find people that work in there and then ask them about that specific job. Because here's the deal. Job description may say something that fits you. Where Herb was talking about the job description he found, he was like, they must have wrote it for me. I'm sure Herb didn't just apply blindly without calling some folks to figure it out. But even if that job description may not have been on point. So when you read it, it might be for you. But just like Herb said, that might not be what you had to do. I mean, how many times in the military have you gone to do X? I'm going to fill this billet because that's what HRC or the Marine Corps headquarters or whatever wants me to go fill. And I get to that organization, and that might be what I'm being rated as, but I'm doing that, everything but what I was going to that place for. And that is huge. Good tip, Herb. That's awesome. So big deal. I'm just going to tell you last thing about interviews for me. Look, man, at the end of the day, Mike, I know you said you're getting ready to go to February 14th for an interview. Good luck. I'm sure you'll do fine. Hey, the one thing I've been told, and it's worked for many people that has been told the same thing, is simple. On your resume, you have a line of events, whatever your synchronized stuff is, right? Have a story for those things. Have something that's already there. And even if it's the same story, just reword it to be so it's for ease of use. At the end of the day, most interviewers will ask you something specific about your resume. Not the whole interview is going to be based on your resume, but they're going to tell me a time when and you can off the top of your head, hey, on this time I did this, and from nuts to bolts, from whatever, soup to nuts, whatever that. I mess that statement up all the damn time. But you know what I'm talking about, cradle to grave. That's easier for me. From cradle to grave, this is what I did, or whatever the case may be. But have that done to each bullet that you have, so you have a story. I mean, it doesn't have to be significant. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out story. Clear, concise. So when the question comes up, it's not something in which you have to find in your head. It's there because you wrote your resume. Somebody else didn't do it. You did it. Read the bullets and create some level of story that helps you relate to that thing that someone's going to ask you. Tell me a time when you succeeded. Tell me a time when you failed. Tell me a time when you actually led a project because you say you want to be a project manager. Things of that nature. But anyhow, all right, Herb, man, we've been here forever. I want to stay. Listen, I got to be honest with you, man. I got to give my kids a bath, and I'd rather stay and talk to you. They can do that later. No, I'm kidding. It's that bath time stuff. So I'm going to do it. But before we leave, there's a few things I want to say. One, bro, I appreciate you coming back on again. I love having conversations with you. This is amazing, and I love what you're doing. That's why I will always tell people, connect with Herb Thompson. He's an amazing guy doing amazing things for our community, and you can't fail on that. And I appreciate you for coming on and sharing your time with us. I do want to give you an opportunity before you go to say anything you want, man. I mean, you have the mic, and you could have it for 3 hours. I don't mind. I just want you to tell us anything, man. Tell these folks that are listening as they're getting ready to jump into that journey, whether it's next week or the 14th when Mike has an interview or whenever it may be. What are some of the things that you would tell people in their preparation as they're getting ready to transition?
Yeah, rely on others. You're going to own the decisions. You're going to own your experience, but rely on others. You're not the first person to do. You're not the first person breaking the 4-minute mile way back when. You're not the first person to go into outer space. People have done this before. And I'll be also, no one knows you better than you. You are the only one that can show and articulate your value. Now, you may struggle, how do I do that? But no one knows you better than you. Now, they may know that job better, or that job description better, just articulate that, own your journey. Like, I think a lot of times we get in our own way, right? Or we overcomplicate it by, oh, this is too hard. We're going to get rejection. Been there. No, you have, Jeff. Hey, nope, we don't care. Like, maybe even you don't even hear back, right? Or you get told, nope, we went okay, next, right? I know who I am. It doesn't change who I am just because I didn't get the job, or quite frankly, because I did get the job doesn't change who I am. So I always just remember that. And I think we talk about humble. To me, that's humble, right? Like, knowing who you are. It doesn't matter if you get a job or you don't. You're a commander, you're not a commander. Doesn't matter. You're a CEO, not a CEO. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what's in the mirror? What do you see in the mirror?
Perfect. What do you see in the mirror? And that's an interesting conversation in and of itself, right? I was actually just had this conversation earlier today, Herb, about my nephew. I said, you're in your mind, you're a lion, but then when you look in the mirror, because what do I see? I mean, what I see is, it doesn't mean that's who you are. You're showing yourself, this is what I am, but your actions are not showing that same. So be a lion. If you want to be a lion, be a lion. But at the end of the day, you do know yourself, and take that. That's great advice. More importantly, I want to say, own your journey. That's Herb's thing. You own your journey, and how you do that is to take accountability for your actions. Understand that, just like you said, you're not the first to do it. People transition all the time, and oh, by the way, you have to. This is something that I often say, from PCS to PCS, from location change to location change. It's all a transition. This is a little bit more. It's a little larger, right? And that's why we consider the word transformation is more appropriate, because it's a new job. That's fine. You've had new jobs. How you will go about getting them, a little different. The things that come along with the new job, all that good stuff, that's a transformation. Take your time. It doesn't end. It's a constant learning process. And the good thing is, like Herb said, he's here for you. I'm here for you. We're all around. There's everybody. I mean, when you go into the LinkedIn world, you'll see people. When you go to your neighbors, there's so many veterans that have gone through this situation. You're not by yourself. Don't feel like you're alone. And if you're feeling that way, reach out, because someone's here to pick you up. Hey, Herb, last time, man, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you as always. And we'll talk to each other soon. Stay in touch, man. And for the rest of you out there, hey, come back next Wednesday or next Thursday, excuse me. We'll have SEAC retired John Wayne Troxel. It'll be a great time. I look forward to it. And until then, Herb, man, I'll catch you all next time on the other side. Y'all be good.